The silence in the council chamber felt heavy enough to crush bones. Trell adjusted his breathing filters and looked across the curved table at 47 faces representing species from every corner of the galaxy. Some had eyes. Some had sensors. All of them stared at him with the same expression of disbelief. "Say that again," demanded Counselor Wren, her scales rippling with agitation. "Slowly this time." Trell's throat sac inflated and deflated twice before he could speak. 50 standard years ago, this council authorized a military action against the third planet of the Sol system. We sent 200 warships. None of them returned. The chamber erupted. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages, translators struggling to keep pace. Someone threw a data pad. It clattered against the wall and fell silent, much like the room did moments later when the head counselor raised all 4 of her arms. "This is impossible," Wren said. "I've reviewed the strategic reports from that era. Sol 3 was classified as pre-contact, stone tools, wooden ships. They barely had electricity." "That was the assessment, yes." Trell pulled up a holographic display. Old star charts appeared, showing Earth as a small blue dot surrounded by warning markers. The survey team reported a violent species, constant warfare, weapons capable of destroying their own planet. The Council voted 17 to 15 to neutralize the threat before they developed space travel. A younger delegate named Asha leaned forward. "But we don't do that anymore. We don't invade worlds." "We don't talk about it anymore," Trell corrected. "There's a difference." The distinction hung in the air like smoke. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. Others accessed their private archives, searching for records that had been classified for half a century. "Admiral Vaughn led the fleet," Trell continued. 3 assault carriers, 15 destroyers. The rest were support vessels. They entered the Sol system on day 1. By day 3, we lost all contact. "All contact," Wren's voice rose. 200 ships don't just vanish." "They did." Trell expanded the hologram, showing the last known positions of the fleet. "The final transmission lasted 8 seconds. I've had it analyzed by our best linguists. Would you like to hear it?" No one answered, but Trell played it anyway. The audio crackled with interference. Then Vaughn's voice came through, distorted but clear enough. "They're everywhere. We can't. How are they even boarding us? Our shields are." A sound like tearing metal drowned out the words. Then screaming. Then nothing. The chamber stayed quiet for a long moment. Finally, a counselor from the back spoke up. "What happened to the crews?" "We don't know," Trell admitted. "We sent a stealth probe to investigate 10 years later. It found debris. Lots of it, but no bodies, no survivors, and something else." He changed the display to show a series of images. Twisted metal, burned hull plating, scorch marks that didn't match any known weapon in the galactic arsenal. "These damage patterns," Trell said, pointing to a particularly mangled piece of wreckage. "Our analysts couldn't identify them. Whatever destroyed our ships, it wasn't technology we recognized." Asha studied the images closely. Could it have been a natural phenomenon, a solar flare, some kind of spatial anomaly? "That was our first theory." Trell pulled up another file. "Until we started monitoring their radio transmissions." The audio that played next was in a language none of them spoke, but the translators worked quickly. A human voice, calm and professional, reading what sounded like a news report. "Strange lights reported across Europe and Asia continue to puzzle scientists. Government officials insist there is no cause for alarm, calling the aurora displays a natural phenomenon." Trell stopped the playback. "This aired on Earth 3 days after we lost contact with Vaughn. They called it an aurora, a light show." "They didn't know," Wren said slowly. "They didn't know they were being invaded." "Apparently not." Trell displayed more intercepted transmissions, news footage, military reports, civilian recordings, all of them showing the same thing: humans reacting to mysterious objects in their sky as if it were a natural disaster, not an alien attack. But if they didn't know, how did they destroy an entire fleet? Asha asked. Trell hesitated. This was the part he'd been dreading. We don't think they meant to. The data suggests they were fighting each other. When our ships appeared, they assumed it was an attack from their rival nations. They launched everything they had. He pulled up grainy footage recovered from a damaged probe. It showed primitive aircraft swarming around a Manthari destroyer, missiles exploding against shields. Then something unexpected, the shields flickering, failing, more aircraft pouring through the gap. Their weapons shouldn't have penetrated our defenses, Ren observed. Even primitive nuclear devices can't breach Manthari shielding. They didn't just use nuclear weapons, Trell said quietly. They used everything: conventional explosives, chemical weapons, kinetic impactors. They even rammed our ships with their aircraft. Pilots stayed inside until impact. The chamber fell silent again. Several counselors looked ill. The concept of deliberately crashing one's own vehicle into an enemy ship was beyond their understanding of rational warfare. There's more, Trell continued. The ground forces fared worse than the fleet. Every landing site became a battle zone within minutes. The humans didn't evacuate their cities. They stayed and fought with whatever they could find. Our troops had superior armor, superior weapons, superior training. But the humans had numbers and they knew the terrain. He showed a final image, an alien combat suit recovered from Earth orbit by a later probe. It had been torn apart from the inside. How? Ren whispered. We don't know, Trell said, but I've been monitoring their broadcasts for years now, and I can tell you one thing with certainty: they're still preparing. They think we're coming back. Asha's voice was barely audible. Are we? The question hung in the air. Trell looked at each council member in turn, seeing fear and uncertainty reflected back at him. That, he said, is why I've called this session. Because 50 years ago, we made a decision that cost us 200 ships and thousands of lives. And now, we need to decide what to do about the species that defeated us without even knowing we existed. The archive vault doors opened with a hiss that reminded Asha of a dying breath. She followed Trell and 3 other counselors into a room that hadn't been accessed in decades. Dust floated through the air, visible in the harsh white lights that flickered on automatically. Everything from the Earth operation is stored here, Trell said, moving toward a bank of data terminals. Physical copies. The council wanted it kept off the main network. Ren touched one of the storage units, her clawed hand leaving prints in the grime. They wanted it hidden, you mean? Nobody argued. Asha watched as Trell activated the first terminal. Ancient projection systems hummed to life, displaying Earth as it appeared 50 years ago. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, swirled with white clouds and blue oceans. Initial surveys began 43 years before the invasion, Trell explained, pulling up report after report. First contact protocols required 50 years of observation before making official contact, but the strategic committee got nervous. The display shifted to show Earth's surface. Cities sprawled across continents, roads carved through forests. Lights blazed even on the dark side of the planet. They were expanding too fast, continued a counselor named Bray, reading from the old reports. Population growth exceeded all projections. Industrial development accelerated beyond predicted timelines. The committee concluded that waiting another 7 years would be catastrophic. Asha studied the images. They looked like any other developing species. What made them so dangerous? Trell pulled up a file marked with red warning symbols. Video footage began to play. It showed human cities burning, massive explosions that turned buildings into rubble, thousands of their own kind fleeing through streets while others fired weapons at each other. This was taken during what they called World War II, Trell said. 60 million of their species died. 60 million. And this wasn't even their first global conflict. The footage changed. Now it showed a different kind of explosion, a mushroom cloud rising into the sky, dwarfing everything around it. The city beneath it simply ceased to exist. They invented weapons capable of destroying their own planet, Ren said, her voice tight, and they used them. On themselves. More files opened. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, weapons designed specifically to cause maximum suffering. The reports detailed humanity's endless capacity for inventing new ways to kill each other. The Strategic Committee's conclusion was clear, Bray read from an official document. Humanity represented an existential threat to galactic peace. Their aggressive nature, combined with rapid technological advancement, made them too dangerous to allow into the wider community. Recommendation: immediate neutralization before they achieved faster-than-light capability. Asha felt sick. Did anyone vote against this? 15 counselors, Trell said, but they were outvoted. The invasion was authorized. Admiral Vaughn was chosen to lead it because of his experience with non-contact species. His orders were simple: disable their military capabilities, establish orbital control, and prepare the planet for supervised integration. The next file showed Admiral Vaughn himself, giving a briefing to his fleet commanders. He was a large Manthari with military honors covering his chest plates. His voice carried absolute confidence. "This operation will be swift," Vaughn said in the recording. "The species is fractured into competing nations. They lack unity, lack coordinated defense, and lack any technology capable of threatening our ships. We expect full planetary control within 72 hours. Casualties on both sides should be minimal." Ren made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a growl. Minimal casualties. He had no idea. Trell fast-forwarded through tactical briefings and deployment schedules. Everything was planned down to the smallest detail: which continents to target first, which cities to avoid damaging, how to minimize human casualties while demonstrating overwhelming force. It all looked perfect on paper. "The fleet entered the Sol system exactly on schedule," Trell said, pulling up navigation logs. "Day 1 proceeded normally. Ships took positions around the planet. Ground forces prepared for deployment. Then they began their atmospheric entry." The screen showed the fleet's position relative to Earth. 200 ships arranged in a precise pattern, ready to descend. Then the logs started filling with alerts. "Electromagnetic interference," Bray read. "Atmospheric disturbances. Communication difficulties." None of it made sense. Earth's technology shouldn't have been capable of jamming our systems. "They weren't jamming us," Trell said quietly. "Look at the timestamps." Asha leaned closer. "The interference began before the fleet revealed itself to Earth, before any human could have possibly known they were there." "It was coincidence," Trell explained. "Earth was experiencing a natural solar storm at the exact moment we arrived. Their scientists called it the Aurora event. It disrupted satellites, power grids, communication networks, both theirs and ours." The next log entries came rapidly. Confused reports from ship commanders. Systems malfunctioning. Then the first mention of human military activity. "They detected us through the interference," Ren said, reading the logs, "but they couldn't identify what we were." Trell pulled up intercepted human communications from that day. The translators had done their work decades ago, converting the alien language into something understandable. "Unknown objects entering atmosphere. All military units to high alert. President confirms this is not a drill. Repeat, not a drill. China reporting similar contacts. Russia too. This isn't one nation attacking another." "What is this? What are these things?" The confusion was obvious. Humans scrambling to understand what was happening, defaulting to the only explanation that made sense to them: an attack, just not from aliens. They thought their rivals had developed secret weapons, Ashash said, understanding dawning. They thought it was World War III. Exactly, Trell confirmed, and they responded accordingly. The next files showed the human response. Every nation on Earth launched everything they had. Fighter jets scrambled, missiles fired, naval vessels opened up with every weapon they possessed, all of it aimed at the mysterious objects in their sky. The invasion fleet's reports grew increasingly desperate. Shield systems failing under sustained bombardment. Landing craft destroyed before reaching the ground. Ground forces taking heavy casualties from defenders who refused to retreat. They were supposed to be terrified, Bray said, reading Vaughn's personal log entries. The plan relied on shock and awe. Instead, they fought like we'd destroyed their home worlds. Every single one of them fought. The final entries were chaotic. Vaughn's measured military language gave way to confusion and fear. Ships reporting borders somehow getting through their hulls. Ground forces cut off and overwhelmed. Requests for retreat, for reinforcements, for any explanation of how this was happening. Then the final transmission. The one Trell had played in the council chamber. Vaughn's voice shouting about enemies everywhere before the signal died. 200 ships, Wren said softly. Thousands of crew members, gone in 3 days. Ashash stared at the frozen image of Earth on the screen. That peaceful blue planet had swallowed an entire fleet without even knowing it was being invaded. She thought about Vaughn's confidence, the committee's certainty that humanity was too dangerous to let live. They'd been right about humans being dangerous. They'd just been completely wrong about what that meant for the invasion. Dira spread the recovered data fragments across the projection table like pieces of a puzzle. Each one represented hours of work, extracting corrupted files from wreckage that had been floating in Earth's orbit for decades. The intelligence officer's 4 eyes blinked independently as she sorted through the information. "This changes everything we thought we knew," she announced to the assembled counselors. "The humans never understood what was happening to them." Wren leaned over the table, examining what looked like a human news broadcast. "You're certain of this?" "Absolutely." Dira activated the first file. A human face appeared, speaking in their quick, clipped language while text scrolled beneath. The translator provided context. Day 1 of what scientists are calling the Aurora event. Unprecedented electromagnetic activity has disrupted global communications, but the phenomenon has taken a disturbing turn. Unidentified objects are appearing in skies worldwide. Military forces from every nation report the same thing: massive metallic structures descending through the atmosphere. The broadcast cut to shaky footage taken from the ground. Something large and dark moved through clouds lit by strange colors. Flashes of light sparked around it, but the object kept coming. They had no frame of reference for this, Dira explained. No cultural context for alien visitation. Their entertainment had prepared them for the idea, but when confronted with reality, their governments immediately assumed military threat. Another file showed what looked like an official government building. A human in formal clothing spoke with barely controlled panic. "The president has authorized all military forces to engage the unknown hostiles. This is not an invasion by a foreign power. We repeat, this is not China. This is not Russia. This is something else entirely. All citizens are advised to seek shelter immediately." "But they didn't seek shelter," Trell observed, reading through Dira's compiled notes. "No, they didn't." Dira pulled up footage from multiple sources. Humans in cities watching the sky. Some held primitive recording devices. Others had weapons. Very few were running away. "Look at this one," she said, focusing on a particular video. It showed a human male on top of a building, pointing what looked like a hunting rifle at a descending Manthari shuttle. The weapon was completely ineffective against the ship's shields, but the human kept firing, kept reloading, never stopped. "Why?" asked Asha. "He must have known it wasn't working." Dira switched to another file. This one had been recovered from a downed landing craft's external sensors. It showed the moment ground forces attempted to occupy a human city. The streets were supposed to be empty. Instead, they were full. Humans poured from buildings with whatever they could carry. Improvised weapons, tools, rocks. They swarmed toward the Manthari soldiers in waves. The soldiers had advanced armor and energy weapons, but they'd been trained for combat against organized military forces, not thousands of civilians attacking from every direction. They didn't fight like soldiers, Dira said. They fought like they were protecting their homes, because they were. The footage showed Manthari troops firing into the crowds. But for every human that fell, two more appeared. They used the environment against the invaders, collapsed buildings, set fires, flooded streets, anything to slow down or stop the aliens they couldn't understand. One particularly disturbing file showed what happened when a Manthari squad tried to establish a command post inside a human structure. They'd cleared the building, set up their equipment, and begun coordinating with their ship. Then the building exploded. Humans had somehow planted explosives in their own structure and detonated it, killing themselves along with the alien troops. Suicide tactics, Ren said, her scales flattening against her skin. They were willing to die to stop us. It wasn't suicide to them, Dira corrected. It was defense. Every piece of recovered data shows the same pattern. Humans didn't see retreat as an option. They saw their homes being invaded by something unknown and responded with everything they had. She pulled up aerial footage from the fleet. It showed a coastal human city with multiple landing sites. The plan had been to secure the city in 6 hours. Instead, 3 days later, the Manthari forces were still pinned down. Humans had destroyed bridges, blocked roads, and turned every building into a potential ambush point. The naval bombardment should have worked, Bray noted, reading the tactical reports. Energy weapons against primitive structures, but look at this. The footage showed a Manthari destroyer firing at the city. Buildings collapsed, streets burned. But when the dust cleared, humans emerged from underground. They'd retreated into tunnels, subways, basements, places the scanners couldn't easily penetrate. They had escape routes, Asha said. They'd planned for this. They'd planned for nuclear war, Dira explained. During their Cold War period, many cities built extensive underground shelter systems. They weren't meant to stop aliens. They were meant to survive attacks from other humans, but they worked just as well against us. Another file showed something that made several counselors look away. A Manthari transport ship in low orbit, its hull breached. The recovered data suggested humans had somehow launched a spacecraft of their own into orbital range. Not a military vessel, a converted satellite launcher. They'd loaded it with conventional explosives and rammed it directly into the transport. Kamikaze tactics, Dira said. Ancient human warfare strategy, deliberate suicide attacks. They'd supposedly abandoned such methods centuries ago, but when faced with unknown invaders, they reverted to every technique they'd ever developed. The recovered audio files were worse than the video. Manthari soldiers calling for evacuation, commanders trying to coordinate retreat, medical officers overwhelmed by casualties, and underneath it all, the sounds of human weapons, primitive by galactic standards but terrifyingly effective in the chaos of ground combat. One audio file caught Asha's attention, a Manthari squad leader reporting to their ship. We've secured a position in what they call a shopping center, multiple human casualties, no survivors preparing to wait. Sensors are detecting movement. How is their movement? We cleared this entire structure. They're in the walls, they're in the ceiling, they're everywhere. Request immediate extraction. Request. The transmission ended with the sound of small arms fire and screaming. They used ventilation systems, Dira said quietly. Maintenance tunnels, crawl spaces. Humans are smaller than Manthari. They could move through their own structures in ways our troops never anticipated. Ren examined the data with growing discomfort. This isn't how warfare is supposed to work. Two sides meet. Technology and training determine the victor. This was chaos. This was what humans call total war, Dira corrected. Every citizen a potential combatant. Every building a potential fortress. No rules, no boundaries, no surrender. They threw away every convention we understand about organized combat. The final piece of data showed Earth from orbit on day 3. Smoke rose from hundreds of locations. Debris from destroyed ships created a ring around the planet. And on the surface, lights still blazed in cities that were supposed to have been conquered. Admiral Von sent his final message at this moment, Dira said, displaying the timestamp. He reported that ground forces had less than 40% combat effectiveness. The fleet had lost 18 ships to what he called impossible attacks. His words, "The humans fight like they have nothing to lose because they think they have nothing to lose. They believe this is their extinction, and species facing extinction don't surrender." Asha stared at the image of Earth, trying to comprehend what she was seeing. A planet full of beings who didn't even know aliens existed, fighting with such desperate ferocity that they destroyed an invasion fleet by accident. Dira's presentation continued into its second day. The counselors had barely slept, too absorbed in the surveillance data to leave the chamber. Now she displayed footage that made their previous revelations seem almost mundane. This was taken 6 months after the invasion, Dira said, projecting an image of Earth's surface. Something was different. New structures dotted the landscape. Strange configurations of metal and energy that definitely weren't there before. "What are those?" Asha asked, pointing to what looked like a massive antenna array spanning several kilometers. "We don't know exactly," Dira admitted. "But the energy signature matches our detection grid technology. They built it using salvaged components from crashed ships." Ren's scales rippled. "That's impossible. Our technology requires genetic locks, quantum encryption, power sources they don't have." "Required," Dira corrected. "Past tense, watch this." The footage shifted to show a human military facility. Soldiers moved equipment through a heavily guarded entrance. The camera zoomed in on what they were carrying: intact Manthari power cells, weapon systems, navigation computers, pieces of the invasion fleet, carefully extracted from wreckage sites. "They started recovery operations the day after the attacks stopped," Dira explained. "Every crash site became a treasure trove. They reverse-engineered everything they could get their hands on." A new file showed the interior of what appeared to be a research laboratory. Humans in protective suits worked on a partially disassembled Manthari engine core. They'd somehow gotten it open without triggering the security protocols that should have melted the entire unit. "How?" Bray demanded. "Those cores are specifically designed to prevent tampering." "They bypassed the security by not understanding it was there," Dira said. "Look at their approach. They treated it like a puzzle, not a protected system. They made thousands of mistakes, destroyed dozens of components through trial and error, but they documented everything, shared information across their scientific community. Within 3 months, they'd mapped the basic principles." The footage fast-forwarded through months of human activity. Research facilities expanded. More salvage teams deployed. International cooperation reached levels that would have seemed impossible before the invasion. "They unified," Asha observed, "all those warring nations." "Completely," Dira confirmed. "Something they called the Unity Accord. Every major power signed it. They agreed to share all recovered technology, all research data, all military resources. The document's preamble says, 'We came together because they showed us what happens when we fight alone.'" A counselor named Gresh spoke up, "But they didn't know they were fighting aliens. How did they figure it out?" Dira pulled up what looked like a human news broadcast from 2 weeks after the invasion. A scientist stood before a projection showing biological analysis results. The DNA evidence is conclusive, the human said, speaking with barely controlled excitement. The remains recovered from crash sites are not human, not terrestrial at all. We are not alone in the universe, and first contact was attempted through violence. The broadcast cut to another human, this one wearing military insignia. We must assume they will return. The technology we've recovered suggests a civilization far more advanced than ours. We survived their first attempt through luck and determination. We may not survive a second. Therefore, every resource must be dedicated to one goal, being ready when they come back. That was 50 years ago, Ren said quietly. Have they been preparing this entire time? Dira nodded grimly. Every single day. Watch what happened in the first 5 years alone. The surveillance footage accelerated, showing Earth's rapid transformation. New factories appeared overnight. Orbital construction began using modified Manthari designs. The humans launched satellites with capabilities that should have taken centuries to develop. Year 3, Dira narrated as the footage continued. First successful test of a human-built faster-than-light drive. It exploded on activation, destroying the test facility and killing everyone inside. They started rebuilding the next day. Year 4, second test. This one made it into FTL space for 3 seconds before catastrophic failure. Only 2 casualties this time. They considered it progress. Year 5, third test. Successful. A human ship achieved stable FTL travel for 6 hours before returning to Earth. They named it Phoenix after some mythological creature that rises from ashes. Asha watched the footage with growing disbelief. They went from primitive rockets to FTL capability in 5 years. That's impossible. They had our technology to study, Bray pointed out. But still, the speed is alarming. It gets worse, Dira said, pulling up current surveillance. This was taken last month. Earth appeared on the screen, but it was barely recognizable. A network of defense stations orbited the planet in perfect geometric patterns. Each one bristled with weapons that looked disturbingly similar to Manthari military technology, but modified, enhanced, made more efficient through human engineering principles. They've militarized their entire solar system, Dira continued. Automated defense platforms on their moon, combat stations at strategic points throughout their asteroid belt, early warning systems that can detect approaching ships 3 light-years away. That's better than our own detection grid. Ren leaned forward. Show me their weapons capabilities. Dira pulled up a series of test firing recordings. Humans had turned recovered Manthari energy weapons into something new. The beams were tighter, more focused. They'd increased power output by 40% while reducing energy consumption. They don't just copy our technology, Dira explained. They improve it. This is a missile system they developed using our guidance computers. It's 3 times faster than the original design and carries twice the payload. Another display showed human warships. They'd built them using principles learned from studying the invasion fleet, but incorporated their own ideas. The ships were smaller than Manthari vessels, more maneuverable, designed for pack tactics rather than individual superiority. How many ships do they have? Asked Gresh. Current estimates suggest 200 combat-capable vessels, Dira said. The same number we sent against them. We think that's deliberate. A message. The surveillance footage showed one of these human warships on patrol near Mars. It moved with predatory grace, scanning space with sensors that could detect threats across impossible distances. On its hull, painted in human writing, was a name: Vaughn's Revenge. The chamber fell silent. Someone had actually named their warship after the admiral who'd led the invasion, not as tribute, as a promise. They've been waiting for us, Asha said. All this time, building, preparing. They think we're their enemy. We are their enemy, Ren corrected. We invaded their world, killed their people. The fact that they didn't know we were aliens doesn't change that we attacked them first. Dira pulled up the final piece of surveillance. It showed Earth's surface at night. Cities blazed with light, but now there were new installations, military bases, training facilities, shipyards building more vessels for their growing fleet. This is what 50 years of preparation looks like, Dira said. A species that went from defending their planet with primitive weapons to building an interstellar military force. They did it faster than any civilization in recorded history, and they did it because we attacked them. Why haven't they expanded beyond their system? Bray asked. If they have FTL technology, why stay in one place? Dira highlighted several human communication intercepts, military communications, government briefings, all of them saying the same thing. Hold position, strengthen defenses, don't venture out until we're ready. They're out there somewhere, and when they come back, we'll be ready this time. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. Humanity wasn't expanding because they were waiting, watching, preparing for the moment when the aliens returned. They'd turned their entire civilization into a fortress, their whole species into soldiers. They think we're monsters, Asha whispered. Can you blame them? Dira asked, gesturing to all the evidence she'd presented. We came to their world in force. We attacked without communication. We killed their people. From their perspective, we are monsters, and they're determined to never be victims again. The council chamber had transformed into a battlefield of words. 3 days of revelations had fractured the assembly into camps that grew more hostile with each passing hour. Trell watched from his position at the central podium as counselors shouted over each other, abandoning the diplomatic protocols that usually governed their meetings. We should have sent more ships the first time, Ren declared, her voice cutting through the chaos. Now look at what we face. A militarized species with our technology waiting to strike. We need to act before they bring the war to us. Gresh stood, his translator struggling to keep pace with his rapid speech. Act? You mean launch another invasion? Have you learned nothing? We couldn't defeat them when they were primitive. Now they have weapons that match our own. Then we need overwhelming force, Ren insisted. A fleet so large they can't possibly resist. Contain them before they spread beyond their system. Asha rose from her seat, her young voice somehow commanding attention despite the noise. Or we could try something revolutionary. We could talk to them. The chamber erupted in laughter from some corners, outrage from others. Ren's scales flattened against her body in a display of contempt. Talk to a species that destroyed an entire fleet. That's turned their whole civilization into a war machine. What exactly would we say? The truth, Asha replied calmly, that the invasion was a mistake, that we thought they were a threat to galactic stability, that we didn't understand what they were really like. They are a threat, shouted a counselor from the back. Dira's surveillance proves it. 200 warships, weapons everywhere, defense networks that rival our best military installations. They're planning to attack us eventually. They're planning to defend themselves, Asha corrected. There's a difference. Every piece of evidence shows a species preparing for a second invasion, not planning one of their own. Bray stood, bringing a measure of order to the chamber. Let's examine our options rationally. Option 1, military action. We send a fleet large enough to guarantee victory. What are the consequences? Trell accessed his data files. Current intelligence suggests they would detect any large fleet approaching their system days in advance. Their early warning network is more sophisticated than ours. They would have time to mobilize their forces. We'd still win, Ren insisted. Superior numbers and experience. Would we? Dira interjected. They've spent 50 years studying our tactics from the invasion recordings. They know how we fight. We don't know how they fight now. Not really. Every war game simulation I've run produces the same result. Massive casualties on both sides with no clear victor. Ren slammed her hand on the table. Then we destroy their planet from orbit, eliminate the threat completely. The chamber fell silent. Even her supporters looked uncomfortable. Ashaz's voice was barely a whisper. You're talking about genocide, billions of lives. I'm talking about survival, Ren shot back. They will come for us eventually. Humans don't forgive. Their history proves it. Every war, every conflict, they remember and seek revenge. We attack them first. They will retaliate. It's only a matter of time. Trell displayed a new file on the main screen. Actually, that's not entirely accurate. Watch this. The footage showed a human broadcast from 30 years ago, a memorial service on Earth. Thousands of humans gathered around structures bearing names, the dead from the invasion. The translator provided context as a human leader spoke. We remember those who fell defending our world from the unknown. We honor their sacrifice, but we must also remember that we survived not through hatred but through unity. Whatever comes next, we face it together, not as nations but as one species. Another broadcast appeared, this one from 15 years ago, a human scientist speaking at some kind of academic gathering. The technology we recovered has advanced our understanding by centuries. Yes, it came from an attack. Yes, people died. But we cannot let vengeance guide us. If we ever meet them again, let it be as explorers, not conquerors. Let us prove that humanity can be better than its worst moments. Propaganda, Ren dismissed. Empty words meant to sound noble. Maybe, Ashaz said. Or maybe they mean it. Look at their actions. They've had FTL capability for 45 years. They could have sent ships to find us, to attack. Instead, they stayed home and built defenses. That's not the behavior of a species planning conquest. It's the behavior of a species preparing for war, argued Gresh. A smart one that knows not to overextend. Or one that's afraid, Ashak countered. Dira, show them the communications analysis. Dira pulled up years of intercepted human transmissions, military briefings, government discussions, scientific debates. The translator had processed thousands of hours of content looking for patterns. 47% of their strategic planning documents reference defensive scenarios, Dira reported. Only 12% discuss potential offensive operations, and those are always framed as retaliation if attacked. The dominant theme across all their communications is fear. They're terrified we'll come back. Good, Ren said. Fear keeps them contained. Fear makes them dangerous, Ashah argued. A cornered animal fights hardest. We've spent 50 years letting them believe we're an existential threat. What happens when they decide the best defense is striking first? Bray raised his voice. Option 2, then, quarantine. We blockade their system. No ships in or out. Contain them indefinitely. That would require a permanent military presence, Trell noted. Expensive, and it would confirm their worst fears about us. We'd be proving we're the monsters they think we are. Option 3, Ashah said forcefully. Communication. We send a small diplomatic vessel, unarmed, broadcasting peaceful intentions. We explain what happened and why. They'll destroy it on sight, Ren predicted. Any ship approaching their system would be seen as hostile. Not if we make it clear we're not a threat, Ashah insisted. We send messages ahead, multiple languages, mathematical proofs showing intelligence, music, art, everything we've learned about first contact protocols. Show them we come in peace. And if they don't care, Gresh asked, if they fire anyway? Ashah met his gaze steadily. Then we'll know they're as aggressive as we feared. But if we don't try, we'll never know if there was another way. We'll be condemning both our species to eventual conflict without ever attempting communication. This is naive idealism, Ren scoffed. The real world doesn't work like that. The real world is what we make it, Ashah replied. We made them our enemy by attacking without talking. We can unmake that choice by actually attempting dialogue. Trell watched the debate continue for hours. Every counselor had an opinion. Every faction had arguments. The Hawks wanted military action. The moderates wanted quarantine. Only a small group around Asha advocated for diplomatic contact. He thought about the footage he'd seen. Human cities burning, Manthari ships falling, 50 years of mutual fear and preparation, all of it stemming from one disastrous decision made in this very chamber. "We need to vote," Bray finally declared. "3 options before us: military action, quarantine, or diplomatic contact. Each counselor will cast their choice." The voting began. Trell watched the tallies appear on his screen. Military action received 12 votes. Quarantine received 19. Diplomatic contact received only 16. "Quarantine wins," Bray announced. "We will establish a blockade around the Sol system. Military vessels will prevent any human expansion beyond." The chamber's alarm system cut him off. Red lights flashed. A mechanical voice announced, "Unknown vessel detected, approaching at high speed. Origin unknown. Trajectory indicates destination, this station." Counselors rose in panic. Guards rushed to defensive positions. Trell pulled up the sensor data, his blood running cold as he saw the approaching ship. It was small, fast, and its energy signature matched human technology exactly. They weren't contained anymore. They were already here. Security forces flooded the council chamber's observation deck. Weapons charged. Defense shields activated around the station. Trell watched through the reinforced viewport as the human vessel approached, ignoring every hail and warning broadcast. "Fire on it," Wren demanded. "Now before it gets closer." "Wait," Asha said, studying the sensor readings. "Look at the configuration. It's not armed. No weapons, no shields, just engines and a small crew compartment." "It's a trick," Wren insisted. "Humans are devious. It could be a bomb, a biological weapon, anything." The ship continued its approach, moving with deliberate precision directly toward the docking bay. Station weapons tracked it, waiting for the command to fire, but Bray held up a hand. "If we shoot an unarmed vessel, we become what they think we are," he said quietly. "Hold fire, seal the docking bay, let it dock but prepare for anything." Trell's hands shook as he pulled up the docking bay monitors. The human ship attached itself to the airlock with surprising gentleness, using docking protocols that perfectly matched galactic standard. Someone had taught them, or they'd learned from captured data. "One life sign," reported the station's security chief. "Only one human aboard, exiting the vessel now." The monitors showed a figure emerging from the ship. Human, definitely, smaller than the Manthari by half, wearing what looked like a modified version of their own pressure suit, painted white with blue markings. The human moved slowly, hands visible and empty. "It's coming to the council chamber," Dira said, tracking the figure through internal sensors. "Security teams are converging, but it's not resisting, just walking." Counselors scrambled toward the exits. Some demanded immediate evacuation. Others called for the human to be eliminated before it reached them. Asha alone moved toward the entrance, ignoring the protests around her. The chamber doors opened. Security personnel flanked the entrance, weapons aimed at the human standing in the doorway. The figure reached up and removed its helmet, revealing a human face. Female by their biological markers, dark skin, short hair, expression remarkably calm for someone surrounded by armed aliens. "Hello," the human said in clear galactic common, her accent strange but understandable. "My name is Rita Hayes. I'm here representing Earth's unified government. I believe we need to talk." Silence gripped the chamber. Hayes looked around at the assembled counselors with apparent interest, studying each species carefully. When her eyes landed on Trell, she smiled slightly. "Manthari, correct. Your people led the invasion force. I've studied your language and culture extensively." Wren recovered first, her voice harsh. How did you find us? This station's location is classified. Hayes reached into her suit and several weapons immediately tracked the movement. She pulled out a small data device and held it up. We recovered this from one of your ships. Took us 43 years to decrypt it fully, but the navigation data was eventually accessible. Your security protocols are very sophisticated. Impressive work. You've been tracking us, Gresh said, all this time. We've been preparing, Hayes corrected. There's a difference. We knew you existed, we knew you attacked us. We didn't know why and we didn't know if you'd return. So we watched, learned, built defenses. The same thing any intelligent species would do when facing an unknown threat. Asha stepped forward despite the protests around her. You came alone, in an unarmed ship. Why? Hayes met her gaze evenly. Because we did our homework. We've intercepted your transmissions for years. Learned your languages, studied your cultures. We know you're not monsters, you're people. Different people, but people nonetheless. And people can talk. You destroyed our invasion fleet, Wren accused. Killed thousands. We defended our home, Hayes replied, her voice hardening slightly. Against what we thought was an apocalyptic event. We didn't know you were aliens until after. We thought our world was ending and we fought to survive. What would you have done? The question hung in the air. Several counselors looked uncomfortable. Hayes continued, her tone softening again. We've spent 50 years afraid, building weapons, training soldiers, preparing for the day you'd return to finish what you started. It consumed our entire civilization, every resource, every person. All focused on surviving the next invasion. She pulled out another device, a projector. Images appeared in the air between her and the council. Human children learning combat tactics in schools, factories producing weapons around the clock, cities built with defense as the primary concern. This is what fear did to us, Hayes said. We stopped exploring, stopped growing, stopped being who we could have been because we were too busy preparing to die. Then why come here, Bray asked, if you're so afraid of us? Hayes smiled again, but this time it looked sad. Because we had a choice to make, keep living in fear or find out the truth. 3 years ago, we finally decrypted enough of your data to understand what happened. Your surveys, your strategic assessments, your reasons for attacking. She displayed more images, the Council's own reports about Earth, the debate over first contact, the decision to invade. You thought we were too dangerous to leave alone, Hayes said. You looked at our wars, our weapons, our divisions, and decided we'd be a threat to everyone. You weren't completely wrong. We are dangerous, but you never asked why. Enlighten us, Wren said coldly. Hayes pulled up images of Earth before the invasion. Beautiful landscapes, diverse wildlife, human cities blending with nature. We fight because we care about our home, our families, our future. Yes, we've made terrible mistakes. Wars, genocide, environmental destruction. But we've also created art, music, literature. We've sacrificed ourselves for strangers. We've built societies based on cooperation and mutual support. Pretty words, Wren dismissed. All species claim to be noble. Then judge us by our actions, Hayes said. She gestured to herself. I came alone, unarmed. I could have brought warships. We have the capability now. We could have attacked this station the way you attacked our planet, but we didn't. Because despite everything, despite 50 years of fear and preparation, we still believe communication is better than violence. Asham moved closer. What do you want from us? Hayes looked at her with obvious respect. Honestly, an explanation. An apology would be nice, but mostly we want to understand why. And then we want to move forward. We have a proposal. She activated another projection. This one showed a document written in both human languages and Galactic Common. Earth requests admission to the Galactic Unity Council, full membership, equal representation, access to shared technology and resources. In exchange, we offer our own knowledge, our resources, and our commitment to galactic peace. The chamber erupted in protest. Ren's voice rose above the others. Absolutely not. You're asking us to reward you for destroying our fleet. I'm asking you to recognize that we're not your enemies, Hayes said calmly. We never were. You made a mistake 50 years ago. We paid the price. Now we have a choice. Continue this cycle of fear and hostility or choose something different. Trell found himself speaking before he'd fully decided to. If we refuse, if we vote to maintain the blockade or worse. Hayes met his eyes. Then we go home. We tell our people that communication failed, that the galaxy is hostile, and we prepare for war, not because we want it, but because we'll have no other choice. We'll become the threat you always feared we'd be, not because it's our nature, but because you'll have made it necessary. That's blackmail, Gresh said. That's reality, Hayes corrected. You created this situation. We're offering you a way out. Work with us. Let us prove we can be part of the galactic community, or push us away and guarantee the conflict you're trying to prevent. Ashad turned to address the council. She's right. We made them what they are. We can unmake it by choosing differently now. The debate that followed lasted hours. Hayes stood calmly throughout, answering questions with patience and precision. She provided data, offered compromises, made no threats but was clear about consequences. Finally, Bray called for a vote. Admission to the council required a two-thirds majority. Trell watched the tally climb, slowly, painfully, but it climbed. When the final vote registered, Hayes allowed herself a small smile. The proposal had passed, barely, but it had passed. Welcome to the Galactic Unity Council, Bray said formally. Ambassador Hayes of Earth. Hayes bowed slightly. Thank you. I look forward to working together, and I have a message from my government. She pulled out a final document. Earth wishes to sponsor an initiative, a treaty banning preemptive invasion of precontact species, called the Sol Accord. We'd like it to be our first official proposal as council members. Ren actually laughed. You want us to ban the very thing we did to you. Exactly, Hayes said. So nobody else has to spend 50 years afraid of the sky.